concerned.
Yes.
So we must retain our cultural autochthonous history, to retain those same structures that keep our people pure in their own way. And if you return it, for example, if you return it, then the people, if you like, to use the modern language in pidgin, you maintain. You wouldn't want to disrupt the system.
No.
You wouldn't want to disrupt the system. It's like when I studied the Benin history. By the time you had a Canadera moving out, and then the people felt, what do we do? How do we retain the authorship? How do we keep our rulership? They needed to keep the place going. And that's how they were able to restore the monarchy. It's just like when you had the Ugis, and the Ugis left, the Ugisos left. When the Ugisos left, and then you now began to have the governorship when Igudu moved around from where his place used to be at Ikupa area. That's it was from there he took his Efiatos and moved around. And in fact said, all these elderly people, your age is gone. Let's have more in the place. You said what we got to work with another person. And then he now took his little fighters if you toes, moved around with him, moved around the whole place, and installed and created a new system, which helped to stabilize Benin Kingdom. And we shouldn't forget that in history.
Very correct, sir. That's I'm always how you respond, is elaborate on issues of what or say. Yeah. So from how you have said it now, going from this line you just put out there, this is an African issue. So on a broader perspective, this is an African dilemma. So let's pull the lens back, even further. Let's see like the tensions between the palace and the states. It's a pre-colonial, it's a classic pre-colonial issue, and it's polluting our post-colonial progress, So I want to, looking at it like this, in parts of Africa where we have seen situations of cultural leaders completely dissolved, like in Uganda, and later restored, and in places like Ghana, where we see the very powerful, and influential, even in society and in politics. How does Nigeria, as a country with so many cultural identities as it is, learn from that, and build a path forward in that regard of stability and balancing cultural and state, relations?
I suppose partially, I will only say it's easy. The people have to agree that culture has the primacy of place in the development of a people. And when you don't put premium on your culture, you have only, like they say, if we may borrow from a colonialist, cut your nose to spite your face. You see it?
Yeah.
So you must keep your culture. When you regard it, there are cultures in Africa where they just don't play with it. Therefore, modernization must be accepted on your own terms, and you deal with it on your own terms. And if you do that, you are likely now to retain the values that drove those cultures of the past. It's a kind of rediscovering those values. And when we rediscover those values, we will now find that that is how you recover a people. And if you begin to do that, you will now place the institutions. There are cultural institutions, there are leadership institutions, then there are systems. You put them up in such a way that everybody regards that this is how we do it, and this is how we believe we can keep going, and this is how, even if we want to modernize in the light of giving intercultural relations, it is a bit of globalization. So you watch TV, you watch CNN, you watch Al Jazeera. These things, of course, touch the mind and touch the people. So it gives a new evaluation about how things are done. So even if you are looking at what other people are doing, you find that you have a thread that people can say distinctly, these are these people. They have an identity, a cultural identity. If we do that, we'll find the kind of respect you have in Ghana, for example, the Asantehene. you know, um, uh, 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 nobody's going to play with it. So you now coming as a modern person, you give due respect to the people through their headship. If you maintain that, you will not have any clash. Because whether you like it or not, there is the call it the filial affiliation between the people and their king. They love and are passionate about their headship. I mean, it's like
It's like a relationship with God, as a Christian or as a spiritual person.
Yes.
Yes.
So, so you find that the people believe so much in their headship, and if you believe that, you can now deal with them through their headship. And if we do that, you can now modernize without compromising. Take Japan. Japan is a good example. It took time. Today they still have emperors.
Yes.
The emperor is not dissolved.
No.
Despite the modernization and the fact that Japan is about there was a time it was the third largest economy in the world. Whatever it is that they have done, they maintain their culture. Even China, big as it is, there are lots of things that manage to maintain. And so, if those cultures have helped those people to grow, are you going to destroy your own in the name of wanting to be Oyibo or wanting to be somebody else? No. We must re-examine where we are coming from.
Exactly. Very correct. That's a very powerful point you just dropped. On a personal level, I find it very weird that people relate modernity as anti-African, like a phase we cannot. I feel like modernity in itself is a process of life.
Yeah.
The time of the Igodomigo, you said, agitating for progressive administration, that was a way modernizing.
So modernizing the Ojo system.
So it doesn't have to be tamed a Western orientation, or So I find it that because for the most part, even right now, as we're talking, when we're speaking in English, so we have this issue of relating our English side with our indigenous side and say our Omoto side. So there's this conflict, and it is what is playing out in society, in our institutions, in every aspect of life. So in that regard, sir, say you as an African and as obviously a very passionate in Africa or traditional advocate, how would you say you were given the opportunity or you were in a room to make reforms in that regard? How would you approach that, sir? How would you help balance this situation of state and the stool, sir?
Balancing state on the stool is to you see, you create boundaries by rules. It's like I told you, I had a conversation with Moe Diawa of blessed memory. And we believe that, like he proposed, we should write them into the Constitution. It defines roles and responsibilities. If you're able to do that, nobody exceeds their boundaries. Today is amorphous. You've not created any rules by which the rules as the self-engagement. There are no rules. What has happened and played out in Edo State because there are no rules, and therefore anybody wakes up and does what he thinks is in his mind is right. But then there will be arguments in the society. But if there are rules, set rules, constitutionally written, and become binding, then you don't have any problem. So we must go back and decide: do we want to put it into a constitution, or is it going to be like if you take the British pattern, which is by convention? Which means the people think and people agree. They don't have to write it down, but they agree that this is the boundaries, set boundaries between tradition and modernization, set between the culture and the state. All these are set out. I don't think we'll have problems. And I would rather advocate that we have set rules that guides everybody, or you put it into the Constitution and everybody's agreed, that everybody will play, as they say, by the rules. If you play by the rules, nobody will have any problems.
That's very fantastic. So that's a very fantastic idea, and I feel if these, necessary stakeholders or entities or parties involved in this could really pay attention to what you just said,